Okay, so imagine this for a moment. A world where myths aren't really myths, where stories that sounded impossible slowly turned into reality. Because sometimes what we call fiction is just something we haven't understood yet. Number 10, the giant squid. For centuries, sailors described something massive beneath the ocean, tentacles rising from black water, shapes moving just below the surface. Most people dismiss these stories as exaggerations, waves, shadows, fear, imagination. But the details were always strangely consistent. Long arms, massive eyes, unnatural strength. Then, in the 1800s, something changed. Pieces of enormous squid began washing ashore. Not small animals, but bodies longer than buses. Even then, scientists hesitated, because accepting them meant accepting something deeper, that the ocean was hiding creatures we had never seen. And in the early 2000s, that uncertainty ended. For the first time, a living giant squid was filmed in its natural environment. Not a legend, not a mistake, just something that had always been there, out of reach. And even now, we've only seen a fraction of what lives below. Number 9, the lost city of Troy. For thousands of years, Troy was just a story, a city of war, of heroes, of a wooden horse that changed history. Most historians believed it was symbolic, a poetic invention, because there was no evidence, no ruins, no location, nothing to prove it ever existed, until one person decided not to accept that. Heinrich Schliemann wasn't a trained expert, but he believed the story had to be real. So he started digging, and beneath layers of earth, he found something unexpected. Walls, artifacts, entire cities buried on top of each other. Not one Troy, but many, some of them destroyed violently. Enough to suggest that behind the legend, there was something real. Not exactly as the story told it, but not fiction either. Number 8, the existence of germs. There was a time when people believed disease came from curses, or bad air, or something spiritual. The idea that invisible organisms could exist and affect the human body felt impossible. But patterns didn't match those beliefs. Illness spread through contact, from person to person, from place to place. Something unseen was moving. Then, microscopes changed everything. Antony von Leeuwenhoek saw something no one had seen before. Tiny living organisms, everywhere. Later, scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch proved what that meant. Disease wasn't random. It had a cause, a biological one. What once sounded like fantasy became one of the foundations of modern science. Number 7, the existence of dinosaurs. People used to believe giant bones belonged to dragons, monsters, mythical creatures, because the alternative felt even more unbelievable, that Earth itself had once belonged to something else. Then, the bones kept appearing. Different places, same patterns. Creatures too large, too strange to ignore. Eventually, scientists reconstructed them, and the picture changed completely. The world wasn't always the way it is now. It had a past, filled with life that no longer exists. What people once imagined as monsters turned out to be memories of a real prehistoric world, hidden in stone. Number 6, other worlds like Earth. For most of history, Earth was considered unique, the center, the only world like this. The idea that other planets could exist like ours felt like speculation. Then, technology improved,
And suddenly, planets started appearing, not in stories, but in data. Thousands of them. Some too hot, some too cold, and some in just the right conditions for liquid water. Not proof of life, but possibility. Today, scientists estimate that billions of Earth-like planets may exist, which means what once felt impossible is now statistically expected. Number 5. Animals with sixth senses. Stories about animals sensing danger before it happens have existed for centuries. Earthquakes, storms, illness. Most people assumed coincidence, but the patterns were too consistent. Animals reacting before humans even noticed anything. Modern science offered a different explanation. Not magic, sensitivity. Animals can detect vibrations, chemical changes, subtle shifts in the environment, things humans simply can't perceive. Dogs, for example, can detect diseases through smell long before symptoms appear. What seemed supernatural was actually biological, just far more advanced than we expected.
Number 4. Other human species. There was a time when people believed humans had always been just us, one species, one path. Stories about wild humanoids or other humans were treated as myth. Then, fossils were discovered. Not quite human, not quite something else. At first, people rejected it, but the evidence kept growing. Neanderthals, Homo erectus, Denisovans, different branches of the same tree. Some lived alongside us, some even mixed with our ancestors, which means, at some point in history, we were not alone. What people once described as others may not have been imagination at all. Number 3. Underground worlds. For centuries, myths described hidden worlds beneath the earth, entire ecosystems, unknown life, dark, silent environments. Most scientists dismissed this completely, but exploration told a different story. Massive cave systems were discovered, stretching for kilometers. Inside them, life, creatures that had never seen sunlight, some without eyes, some adapted entirely to darkness, and deeper still, microorganisms living kilometers beneath the surface, surviving heat, pressure, and isolation. Not fantasy, but not what we expected either. The idea of entire civilizations underground remains unproven, but the core idea that life can exist far below the surface, in complete isolation, is no longer a myth. And it raises a deeper question. If life can exist there, where else could it exist? Number 2. Invisible influence. For centuries, people believed in unseen forces shaping human behavior. Curses, spells, invisible control. Science rejected those ideas, but modern research revealed something unsettling. Human behavior is influenced by environment, by chemicals, by subtle stimuli. Light can affect mood, sound can increase anxiety, social pressure can change decisions, even without awareness. Not control in a mystical sense, but influence, predictable, measurable, real. What once felt like mystical manipulation turned out to be something quieter, and in some ways, more powerful. And number 1, the Amazons. Ancient stories spoke about a society of warrior women, strong, independent, fighting in battles. For centuries, historians dismissed this, a myth, a symbol, not reality. Then, archaeology uncovered something unexpected. Graves of warriors buried with weapons, at first assumed to be men, until DNA proved otherwise. Many of them were women. Some showed signs of real combat. These weren't exceptions. They were part of cultures where women fought. Not exactly like the legends, but close enough to recognize the origin. The myth wasn't created from nothing.
It was shaped from reality, from encounters, misunderstood, exaggerated, but not imagined. And when you look at all of this together, a pattern starts to form. Things once dismissed as impossible weren't impossible at all. They were just waiting, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be understood. And remember, the universe doesn't reveal its secrets to those who rush. It reveals them to those who know how to look. Subscribe and keep listening to the silence.